Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. If we could just stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. What we're going to do is we're going to approve minutes. We have a staff presentation from Phippsburg, and then we will hit the public session, and I'll make a few comments before the public session. Okay? So let's go with approval of minutes for our January 24th meeting. Yeah, Jen?
I move approval.
Okay, motion by Jen, second by Bill. Any questions?
I have just some typos. Page 2, where it's under update on health and safety protocols. Third sentence, it says the district had 86 position cases as positive. And then underneath the statistics, I'm just making a suggestion that any place that we refer to COVID, that we just replace that with COVID-19. It's just a personal bugaboo. But if we could fully say COVID-19, any place that COVID is mentioned. And that was it for me.
Any other questions on the, yeah, Jen?
I didn't hear Lorna. Did she say page 4, second paragraph? Is that what you said, the position?
1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah.
Oh, position to positive?
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay, that was it. Thanks.
Okay, so okay, as amended? Okay, all in favor? Okay, minutes are passed. Thank you, everybody. Adjustments to the agenda. Patrick, do you have anything?
No, just that if it is too late tonight, the board can just decide the executive session could be held tomorrow if it's too late tonight, but we can decide that when we get there.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, do you want to introduce our presentation?
So we're pleased to have one student and 2 staff members here from Phippsburg today. And this is something that it's a hydroponic planter that we have at Phippsburg. And we'd like to thank Kelt for helping to donate this, as well as the seeds for this. And we have ordered one of these for each of our elementary schools in RSU1 and looking to get one for BMS and Morse as well. And you'll see from the presentation today what a great educational tool it is for the school. And so I'd like to have Melissa Smith, Mary McCauley, and we have Gabe Estes here to do a presentation. So if you guys want to come on up. Thank you for being here tonight.
All right. Hi. So as Patrick mentioned, we got this. We received the hydroponic planter through Kelt. So Kelt received a grant for the local community gardens and Phippsburg Elementary School garden, and the grant was through the Whole Kids Foundation, a edible education grant, and they are overseen by the Whole Foods Market. Anyway, they applied for the grant, they got the grant, and a perk of the grant was we could get a hydroponic planter. So without the glow lights, so the glow lights are a big part of it too. But Kelt, we immediately jumped on it and said we'd love to do it as part of our outdoor education curriculum and our science curriculum. So we took it on, and Kelt purchased the glow lights to go with it. So you'll see pictures of it. It's set up so it's hydroponic. It runs the lights all night long, and then during the day the lights are off, but it's all automatic on a timer. It waters itself. It's wonderful. All we have to do is feed it nutrients once a week, and we'll talk more about what we do with mostly the lettuce that we get. And I think that's it for, we like to consider it seedlings to salad, and it's a great part of our 5210 program too that we do, that we emphasize, because Anna in our kitchen is just superb, and she always tries to go by that, and making the kids try new things, and they get so excited about when we bring lettuce down to them.
Yeah.
So.
If we could go to that second slide on there just to see it light up. So you don't usually see it light up during the day because it's all on an auto timer. So it flushes water every 45 minutes for 15 minutes. I'm lucky enough that this is in my classroom and my students absolutely love it. I was thinking it might be a distraction because the water does make some noise, but it's actually very relaxing and it's not on for so long that it's disruptive. So I just happened to come in one day after losing power, and I was just lucky enough to see this on because we had to fix the timer. It was a little bit off. So you can keep going through the slides. When we first got it, it was just an automatic bundle of, we didn't choose what came with it. So we had some lettuce, strawberries, beans, different herbs, and some edible flowers. And it turned out that the edible flowers were just a really fun thing for the kids to learn because we hadn't quite figured out how to connect it with education. So we were just having fun watching it grow. Our fourth grade math group loved having an edible flower before each lesson. And we also enjoyed watching the strawberries grow. They didn't produce a lot for one plant, but it was such a great learning experience to see the whole cycle of flower to fruit. I discussed it with Gabe while we were sitting here, and we said that the tomatoes do okay. We didn't think that the beans did very good. And I don't know if it was too warm in our classroom. So we kind of figured that out, and we mostly just do lettuce now. We do have 2 tomato plants. And then this is our first in-house gardener. His name, and actually, can we flip through some of these? So these are our volunteers who have been really enjoying being part of this whole production of helping Mary McCauley feed the plants and just looking at their, yeah. Even just like one weekend's worth of growth is visibly noticeable even without measurement. I think there's a lot of opportunities for science, and we're just kind of skimming the surface. So he is our first in-house gardener. This is Gabe Estes. He has shown the most enthusiasm for the plants and had just this natural ability to say, you need to be trimming some of that so it grows better. So we put him in charge, and he's been really impressing us. Do you want to talk about what you've been doing?
Sure.
Come over near the microphone.
So, when you would trim the plants, you would always trim the big ones, and I would watch out for the smaller ones in the middle. So don't go ahead and grab them and snip a bunch, because you're probably gonna cut a bunch of small ones and leave the small ones to grow, and then you'll snip those once those get bigger. And I do it twice a week,
Yeah.
and
How much do we get?
you get about 1 basket.
Yeah, it's a pretty good set. I think there might be a picture of you in there at the end with your basket, and it's quite a bit. What happens with that when we get the lettuce?
We bring it down to the kitchen and bring it to Miss Anna's, which is our chef.
And then everyone at school enjoys it.
Yeah.
Would you say that more people eat salads now that they know we grow the salads?
I had no idea.
They
It
wanna
seems
try
like
it.
it. Yeah.
They like to try. Anna pushes it. She talks it up. It's good.
Yeah. All right. Did you have anything else?
Yeah,
you
one
want-
other thing that came up. So we're trying to intertwine in our curriculums, and one thing that just happened right before break was the 5th grade. They're reading a story. I forget the name of the story, but
I'm not
they're
sure
reading a
either.
book, and in the book it was about growing hydroponically vegetables, and they really didn't understand all well. So they the opportunity to come down to the class, to the room, and I could explain it, and they watched me feed it nutrients, and we talked a lot about it. So we're trying to find different ways to segue it into the different parts of the curriculum.
Yeah.
I
I think that's all we have.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Any questions?
Any questions, anybody? Go ahead, Jennifer.
Gabe, I'm so impressed. I actually have started growing hydroponically at my house for the first time ever this winter. I have never done it before. I have a little tiny one. And I was wondering, have you ever seen what's underneath the little pods that the plants grow in? Have you ever pulled one up and been able to look at all the root systems underneath?
So when we were planting, I could see the roots, and then when we were taking the ones we didn't need, I could see all those roots
it's just amazing that they all get intertwined with each other. I've had a hard time when I try to get them out because I'm replanting mine in dirt now, the tomatoes. So maybe they'll be ready for when I plant outside. But I want to warn you, don't try to grow parsley. It takes like forever. It's so frustrating. Lettuce grows quickly. The other thing I just want to tell you is if you have any interest in growing, that there's something that they call microgreens, and they're seeds that they grow really fast, like in 7 days, and they grow up to be about like this high. And you cut them off before they get too big, but they're really tasty, and they're kind of like put them on salads and sandwiches and things like that. And they grow really fast, so it would be kind of cool to see, like you can see them happening really quickly if you ever are interested in trying to grow any of those. So thank you for your help. I really appreciate it.
We should try that.
We should try that, yeah.
Any other questions? Comments?
I have a
Yeah,
question.
go ahead.
My question is, have you ever had any experience with pests yet? And if so, what has that been?
No, we haven't had any pests. We have a couple stink bugs that live in our room. We've named them, but no, other than that, and I don't think they have anything to do with the planter.
Okay.
But
That's
no,
lucky.
we haven't noticed that.
No, it was funny because right before break, I did harvest some of the larger leaves and run home, and as washing them, there was one of the stink bugs.
Oh,
Yeah, that was the first time I ever saw it. I don't think we've really had problems with it.
yeah.
So one time when I was gardening, I saw a stink bug at the end when I was gardening, right on one of those rings.
Oh, yeah, the light rings that are on the.
Mhm.
Yeah, he's like they're the guardians.
Great. Well, thank you so much. What a great project. Thank you for sharing with us. We really appreciate it. Okay. So we're going to start the public session in a minute. Just a few comments beforehand. I just wanted to welcome everybody. Thank you for being here, for participating. We've been through a lot together through this pandemic, and it appears we're seeing light at the end of the tunnel. And we are trying to work out the best way to get there. And that's what a lot of tonight will be discussing and possibly deciding, but that's what we're looking at. And I just want to be very appreciative of everyone. Sometimes the discussions can be heated, but thank you all for being respectful of each other, whether you agree with folks or not. I'll ask when you come up that, you be respectful to one another. And let me just give you a little background so you know how we got to this point. When we all left for vacation, the way everything looked was they all but told us it was looking like the Maine CDC would, by mid-March, make masks optional, that they'd make an announcement in early March, that's what we were waiting for. And looking at that and perceiving that and knowing how we had followed everything up to this point, said, well, that's reasonable. After winter break, a couple weeks, if people have traveled, that makes sense. And then we can go mask optional. And all of that looked great, which is why we didn't feel we had to make an extra decision. Then what probably a lot of you have heard is then over the weekend, the federal CDC came out with all these guidelines, which just seems to be confusing the heck out of everybody. And so then we're sitting here going, well, now what? And is the state going to continue to go? I think personally, I think the train's left the station, but are they still going to do that? What's going to happen? Are we going to have to deal with them saying something else or not? And so that's kind of where that little conundrum came up. And so, on our agenda, we are revisiting the health and safety protocols. We're going to hear from doctors. We're going to hear from everybody. We're going to get some details. We'll go over some survey results and see where all this is going. And the board can decide if, we want to have that discussion tonight about, if all this is happening, does that look like that's a good date? Are we ready to commit to something? Do we wait? Do we not? So all of that is going to come up. So please be aware, we're not definitive on, it has to, we have to wait for this, or we're not waiting for that. We're going to have a discussion tonight. We're going to be open and transparent about it. That's why, we're glad everybody's here, and we want to hear from you. But that's, that's where things are headed. We just want to do it right. We want to make sure our staff and administration have enough time to understand any, operational procedure that is changing. How are we going to be responsible for kids who have COVID and when they come back and who has to wear a mask at that point? It's not just about wearing a mask or not. It's these other protocols that we want to make sure we have all our ducks in a row. So we're trying to figure all that out, get all this done so we can make a sound decision as to when these masks come off. And again, it's up to the board, but we can continue to have, more detailed discussion after we hear from everybody. It is on the agenda. That is a big part of what we're doing tonight. So unless there's any other board member wanted to make a comment before I open it to public. Logistics, just come on up, state your name. What do we usually do? State your name and the town that you're from. That's right. And we're going to try to limit it to 3 minutes. We'll time you just so you have a heads up of when to please wrap it up. But we want everybody to have a chance. So I open it up.
Good evening. My name's Maureen Craney, and I live in West Bath. And I appreciate being here tonight, and I appreciate all the work that you've been doing. I will say that it was encouraging to see the survey, and it was also encouraging to see Patrick's email with some positive things. But I guess what I come here tonight to ask, regardless of whatever you decide, if we decide that masking is optional, if we don't decide that, I'm asking for some consistency. Asking, that when we implement these procedures, that we really put a lot of thought into, are our teachers going to be able to implement this consistently? I don't know, what everybody else's experience has been, but I have felt like there's been a lot of inconsistencies and incongruencies. I do feel like it does deteriorate the integrity of this institution when we implement these procedures and we are not following through with that. Things like having large events in the school and Morris High School in particular, but not being able to have a school-wide assembly, welcoming people to come in, take their mask down and eat from all over different communities and not really having, but yet our kids can't even socialize during lunchtime. They have to sit at a dot. I mean, I just really, really implore you to really be thoughtful about that. I think it's really tough. And I think it's been tough on our kids to sit there and keep these masks on, with headaches consistently, anxiety, some people don't have a problem, but I have a child who does not feel comfortable wearing a mask. He doesn't want to participate in the indoor floor hockey, which I feel like is a rite of passage for our middle schoolers. And he doesn't want to do it because of the masks. Let's think about what we are really taking away. What's the the risks versus, are we really weighing that out? To me, I feel like just my son saying, both my sons, not wanting to do the floor hockey was sad for me, that is a great way for them to be active, to be social. And, because of the masking, they didn't want to be part of it. And that was really discouraging. And I just think, if we're going to welcome large groups into the school and allow people to take their masks down and eat and just be walking around, but yet our students are asked to sit at a dot and they can't participate in floor hockey with their masks off, it doesn't make any sense. And I think that it's really time for us to really think about what we're asking our students to do. And you go out in the community, nobody's wearing them anywhere else. I just think our kids are smart. And I feel like it's a disservice to them. And so whatever we decide today, I really just hope that we keep in mind that our kids are, our kids are important here, in asking them to do something that nobody else is doing and having the inconsistencies and incongruencies that I've seen. It's really, and it's hard for them to continue on with this. And I just ask that you all think about that and as we move forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Maureen.
A little tall for this. My name's Matt Bachman. I live in Rousick, here with my wife Dina, and really appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight and that you're all willing to listen and kind of have this forum for us. So our children, Charlie and Bella, they attend Woolwich in the 5th and 6th grade. Last night we saw the update from Patrick, and we're a little bit kind of questioning the wait, watch, and follow methodology that's kind of persisted with the board over the past 2 years. I think as elected leaders of our school community, you're here in service of the voice of the community. And it seems like based on the survey results, the community's spoken overwhelmingly, staff, students, and guardians, they support masks being optional. The most recent federal CDC guidelines, which I think you referenced, are based on hospital beds, hospital admissions, both of which are not distinguished with the way that Maine reports. It doesn't tell you if it's from or with. So that's a tough thing to follow. And also the third factor being new COVID cases, which Dr. Shaw has said are clearing a backlog. So it's tough to kind of rely upon that data. And I've even reached out to Allison Hepler, our representative, to try to clear this up because it's a misrepresentation of what's happening here, especially in our community. I guess we teach to lead based on how we lead. Wait, watch, and follow is not the lesson we want our kids to learn to make them good leaders. I don't think it's fair to tell a child the school board will make a decision after waiting for the Maine CDC to do whatever they're going to do whenever they're going to do it. It's understandable there is time needed to implement the challenges of moving to a mask optional situation. What we'd like to see is a vote tonight to end the mask mandate and move to mask optional starting in 2 weeks, the 14th. This gives the RSU 2 weeks to make plans and changes and gives our children hope and a great example of leadership in action. I understand this is a very divisive issue. It's personal. Not everyone agrees or will agree with when it's time to lift COVID restrictions. What we want is the elected board of leaders to lead and not follow. Mask optional is what our district wants, what our children want, and what experts in the field of epidemiology, as I think you've all seen the article I sent, are pointing to. So I just would ask that you please stop waiting and watching and following and just lead for us and help our children, kind of like what others I'm sure will say, to have some hope here. And thanks for the time.
Hi there, Melinda Baxter, Woolwich. I think you all pretty much know how I feel about this issue, but I wanted to come forward tonight to just speak into what we're at almost a 2-year mark of coming up here in March, and it's no longer a state of emergency. We're in what's something that's probably going to be endemic, and I've asked Katrina, and I meant to get back to her because I'm curious about the percentage of people in this population that have had COVID. Specifically at Morse, I think it's pretty high. I would say it's above 50%. And to look at that as something that there's a lot of natural immunity in our community at this point. And our children are not the ones that are filling up the hospital beds, even if that was at issue, which I do not believe it is right now. It's frustrating to see that CDC edict come out on Friday because I really feel that it's time to move forward and establish what maybe it's new normalcy, but some normalcy in our children's lives. As Maureen said, most of us are operating out in the world. We don't really have to wear masks much anymore, but yet our children, who are the least vulnerable, have been in masks endlessly. My daughter hasn't had a normal year in high school since 9th grade. When I saw that, that graphic come out on Facebook recently, I didn't even put it together. That it's been 9th grade. She's going to graduate in June. I just want her to have a few months of normalcy and not be fighting with, pull your mask up, this distraction. And it's theater at this point. The CDC has said these masks that most of the kids and adults are wearing don't do anything against COVID. And so it's like the information is there. Even the powers that be have said so. So why do we persist with the theater? Let's just breathe fresh air. Let our kids do their thing. You know, my daughter would have played basketball this winter if she didn't have to wear a mask. It's like Maureen's saying, you know, there's things they're opting out of that they shouldn't have to opt out of. You know, it's sad. It's a very sad thing. But I think that we can come together as a community and just say enough's enough, and let's do what's right and really is based in science and is in the best interest for our kids. So thank you for all you do. Hard time to do what you're doing. And I respect and appreciate what you have to face and deal with. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Darius Stoke, and I'm from Woolwich, and I have one child at Morris and 3 at Woolwich. And first of all, I just want to say big thank you to Lorna, Jennifer, and Mr. Manuel, who all got back to me when I emailed you. So I really appreciate that when I emailed you about this issue. But I'm going to agree with all the other speakers and all the different points that they had before me about the inconsistencies of it. I don't know if any of you have watched the basketball tournament. It's been really cool to see the highlights, some really great basketball. I hate to tell you, but wearing the mask playing basketball is absolutely ridiculous. First of all, they can't really breathe that well. Second of all, and I'll show you, this is what they're all playing like. So why are you making the kids wear masks playing basketball? Now, has there been a big outbreak among basketball players? I haven't heard about it on the news. The tournament's been awesome, but it just looks ridiculous. Look at any of the photos. They're obviously not doing it good. Second of all, you do have now if you want to look at, weapons in our quiver, you go to CVS. If you want to have an N95 mask, every person right here in this room can go there and get 3 ones provided. The government was a little late on this, but now you can get free COVID tests. Literally, the news article said half of the COVID tests that they spent money on, no one's going to claim. So what is the problem? We all can have them on. If what the CDC says is correct now, which is hard to understand what's what, this thing is doing no good. And the only thing that is an N95, they're all available for all of our teachers, all of our staff, any child who would like to wear one. If you talk about survey, vote, yeah, unofficial a little bit, but there's really good feedback from the survey in our community, really strong. I think it was over 1,700 guardians responded, 70%. Nowhere in politics today, I mean, we all know it's pretty horrible, right? The divisiveness, you're never going to get a higher outcome on anything, okay, all across the board, that this is time for the school board to act. And I do agree with Matt that we should be leading from the front and not waiting. What else are we waiting for, I guess? What other metric are we waiting for? I mean, the only thing I can think of is that there's some sort of funds that may be tied to the masking. I don't know if that's true or not. And if that's not true, then I guess I don't know what else we're waiting for. That it's time to lead and step forward. And I do also agree with what Maureen said about the school lunches. I do have a daughter who's diabetic. Literally, one day at school, she's having lunch. And if anybody knows what it's like to be diabetic, you can't eat without putting insulin in. So my daughter decided to have something else from her lunch, which she hadn't put her insulin in, leaned over to pick up her insulin pump to type in, and one of the monitors says, "What are you doing? You need to put your mask on if you're not face down eating your lunch." Now, come on now. What do you think's more harmful to my daughter, who's a type 1 diabetic, diabetes or COVID, which lo and behold, she had, no big deal. The worst part about COVID for my family are in which I'm so glad they're over with, the contact tracing and the staying home from school for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, another week. My kids enjoy school. They enjoy all the activities. They like seeing their friends. They like doing the schoolwork, but 3 weeks at home, another 2 weeks, another time. I'm so glad that's gone, but I just don't see what other metric we're waiting for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Racy. I'm from Woolwich, and I'm writing this to you addressing the mask mandate in our school. It should no longer be in place. There's absolutely no science backing up the masks still being on students. So many schools and states are removing masks on students, as they should, and Morris High School and other schools should be taking the same step in the right direction. Keeping students in masks for reasons of fear is ridiculous. I know me and plenty of others that do not want to be masked for the last year of high school or just high school in general. This should not be put off anymore. The longer kids are in masks, the worse the outcome could be. Young people will be okay when they get COVID. I can say that from personal experience. I have been exposed at work and school countless of times that have not gotten it in those places. And I'm going to be honest, I barely wear my mask at school. Every single one of my friends, vaccinated and unvaccinated, has had COVID. We have all been completely fine. It is inevitable that everyone is going to get it at some point, and no mask that the world worships will protect you from that. This should be a decision that is based on what the masks are doing to our kids. The headaches, shortness of breath they cause. No one should be breathing in their own carbon dioxide all day long. Since when is that healthy? I know many think that you are just trying to protect people, and for those that feel they need a mask to protect themselves and others, should be allowed to wear them. But those of us who are fed up and know that they do not do anything should have a choice. Numbers are coming down in Maine, so I think that it is time as a school to look at the facts and take the masks off the children.
Thank you.
I'm short, sorry. I'm Nina Ryan, and my mom is on the school board, but this is from my own personal experience. I'm a senior at Morse. For 2 years now, I've complied with everything that I was supposed to do. I wore my mask, I got vaccinated, and I got boosted. And restrictions lessened for, pretty much everywhere else, like malls and bars before like anything, which is kind of crazy. But it kind of stayed stagnant for us. And it's been 2 years since musical performances have graced the walls of Morse High School. I've witnessed the strangling of my music department as the chorus had to hum last year, and a lot of music classes were cut altogether, including rock band and other jazz band factions. I'm deeply involved within the music community of Morse. I love my art, and it broke me both emotionally and mentally to be deprived of something that's so vital to us as a school and as a community. If we needed anything at this point, it would be music. Amongst all of these restrictions, the health concerns of students are once again not a priority. Singing in mass creates serious vocal strain that's not only unhealthy but unnecessary to be putting young musicians through. Masks are audiovisual barriers, and as a vocalist who also wears hearing aids, these past 2 years have been extremely demanding on both my voice and my ears. The lack of attention that these issues get, despite their seriousness, is disheartening for those of us going through them. I'm not an anti-masker, clearly. When they become optional, I'm still probably going to wear them for most of my classes. My appeal to you is on behalf of the students taking part in strenuous activities and extracurricular activities such as sports and music. We need them off. Forcing students to sing and exercise in masks is ineffective, more harmful, and disproportionately enforced. Unlike sports, music is held to high standards when it comes to wearing their mask properly and at all times, even though we perform an activity that requires similar intensity of breathing. Fine Arts Night is Wednesday night at Morse. It will be the first music concert since 2019, and my peers and I are being required to perform through masks with high restrictions. It is all for looks and for a false sense of security at this point. Students remain the least problematic, but are restricted the most out of any population. We want our lives back, our music back, and our faces back, to be honest. We want to finally receive recognition as a responsible part of this community. And as a musician, it hurts to see my livelihood on the back burner. I know that this reflects the beliefs of many of my peers, and I hope that as representatives of us, you realize the need to immediately end the required masking, at least for strenuous activities and extracurriculars. And I think if we can accomplish that step, the rest will follow naturally, regardless of what the CDC says. So that's that. Thank you for listening, and thank you for all
Thank you,
of
Nina. Thank you.
Hello, I am Waylon Rohr. I go to Morse High School, and I'm a ninth grader, and I do sports, and I work out here in the workout room. And right now, I think masks are kind of not helping us as much as they're hurting us. As a person who has had COVID, I can say that I did not have any symptoms that were hospital. If anything, it was just an excuse to play video games. My friends have all had it, including the basketball team that I was on. There was a kid on my team who missed half of his season because of COVID. And that's just ridiculous, I think. Because of that, his first game was a month and a half away from his second game. And that may have removed him from playing varsity next year that he might have made. And now for the workout room, I think that the workout room at Morris is a great piece of equipment that's like very underused by the students. But for the students that do go, I feel it's just not cool for them to have to wear masks because people who would have gone that maybe not want to change and think this is a great way to are now discouraged from doing it now that they have to wear masks, and it's making it harder than it already is to say that you want to change and that you want to better yourself. And having to go through the weightlifting, cardio in there with your mask on is doing more harm than good. Like, as I said, the students aren't the one getting hospitalized from the COVID. And us having to wear masks while working out is just putting us at risk for other things other than COVID that are a lot more dangerous. And I just think it's ridiculous. They're having to move on with athletics that if, as Morris, a school that has to wear masks, if we go to an away game or a team comes home to us, then they don't wear masks at their school. Everyone has to wear masks when they come to us or we go to them. That's just ridiculous. That school has made their decisions to make masks optional, and we are forcing it on them to wear masks when we go to there, which is terrible. And I think that the masks, for the athletic community, and when I'm at school and classes, it's bad too, but especially in athletics, I think that masks should definitely be removed. And I think all of my teammates can agree with that.
Thank you very much.
I'm Julie Damon from Bath. I actually had a lot of notes, but I'm feeling pretty, I don't know, optimistic, I guess, for the first time with a lot of people speaking here.
Excuse me, Julie, do you have a mask at all, or
I'm sorry?
do you have a mask at all?
Oh, yes, I'll put on
for-
my theater here.
Yeah, it's
Make
just the rule for the moment.
Make y'all feel better.
It won't be all for.
Make y'all feel better.
Thank you.
So I guess one thing, I mean, I think most of us agree that the masks are foolish, and it is theater at this point, and the whole time, I believe. And I just want to read something from the CDC that talked about masking. Let's see. So this is around the CDC site that it says, the recommendation, of course, is an N95 mask. But if you have to wear a mask, it says a mask, any mask is better than no mask at all. Multiple layers of tightly woven breathable fabric, nose wire, fabric that blocks light when held up to bright light source. Do not wear cloth masks with gaps around the sides of face or nose, exhalation valves or vents or other openings, single layer fabric or those made from thin fabric that doesn't block light or wet or dirty material. As I had mentioned another time when I was here, that my 6-year-old grandson had last year, all these kids, the little kids wear masks that they cough into and drool into and eat on and do all these things. So they're not clean. We had seen kids pick the mask off the ground and put it back on their mouth. So they're not clean. I don't think just mask restrictions, all restrictions. I think of all the terrible things this past 2 years. I've been volunteering in the school with my kids for over 30 years, and I haven't been able to volunteer in 2 years with my grandchildren. And no parents have been able to volunteer with their kids, and I think that's foolish. I think it's huge for kids to be for parents to be a part of their kids' school and their kids' lives, and to know what's going on here. And I think all the restrictions should be lifted. People should be able to come in here and enjoy the children and enjoy their own kids and the schools and things like that. And these young kids talking, I think it's great that they are tired of the masks also. I think the sad thing, and maybe happy for some people, is that I think a lot of kids unfortunately will still wear the masks. I know my daughter's a senior, and first year she balked it, she hated it, but now this year I think they've been brainwashed enough where, now she wears a mask everywhere she goes, even when she doesn't have to, because she says it's the right thing to do. That was something she didn't say for the first entire year, but again, it's been enough brainwashing. So I was just going to quote something that Dr. Fauci had said on an interview with MSNBC on 12/29/21. a direct quote. He says, since all hospital admissions are tested for COVID, sorry, many come to the hospitals with COVID as opposed to because of COVID. The real reason might be a broken leg or appendicitis or something like that. That's a direct quote from Dr. Fauci. And I think a lot of these masks and these stupid rules have been because people have been made to fear. They're fearing all these, 200,000 people are in the hospital or died, or the hospitals are overwhelmed with it. And Dr. Fauci himself says, which many people, many health professionals along the way have said, that being hospitalized with COVID or dying with COVID or of COVID is two totally different things. If you get a broken leg and you go to the hospital, they test you, you have nothing wrong with you, but it comes back for positive COVID, you are counted as a COVID hospitalization. That has got to let you all know that if 20 people went to the hospital tomorrow and 20 people were hospitalized with COVID, you got to know that 20 of them weren't there because of COVID. They could have been there with anything else. So again, all the restrictions should be lifted. It makes no sense whatsoever. And I went prom dress shopping with my daughter a couple weeks ago. I'm even afraid to buy a prom dress. I did buy her one, but I was afraid because I'm like, what's going to happen between now and June? What are they going to do? The kid's not going to be able to go to prom. Is something going to happen? Poor kids that have missed prom and they've missed chorus and they've missed all these things. It's terrible and it's time. And don't wait 2 weeks. I mean, do it tomorrow. It's time. This is ridiculous. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody else? Yep.
Hi, I'm Charlene Wyman. I'm a resident of Phippsburg, and I have 2 students at the high school and 1 student at the middle school. I think there's been some really great, valid points made tonight. I've noticed the change in my kids the last 2 years, not wanting to be able to participate in sports due to COVID, mask regulations, so forth. I've seen them give up things they love. Mental health. It hit my family hard. Sorry, I'm a crier. I've seen the change in all of my kids. And one kid in particular was at a very low point during all of this due to the things that they had to give up, the friends they couldn't see, the distancing, the masks, everything. And things came out of their mouth that no parent should hear. And that's, I feel like some people are not getting up and speaking about that. Generally, I'm pretty public with most of my stuff. I haven't even told my closest family about this, but I think we're making these kids wear masks. They are like the lowest percentage population to risks, and I think we really need to think about what it is doing to their mental health at this point. I haven't been afraid of COVID during all of this. I've been afraid of what it's been doing to my kids, and that's just it. I guess I can't go any more on that. I think we really need to think about that. So it's the risk of COVID, it's the risk of mental health. It's been 2 years, and I think they've dealt with a lot. If you ask a child how long 2 years is, it's a huge chunk of their life. And I think it's just time. I think we need to start reestablishing their lives a little bit better, giving them the option, returning stuff to more of a normalcy. Thank you for your time. Thank you for letting me get up and speak. I appreciate all you've done. I wouldn't want to be in your positions.
Thanks, Charlene. Thanks for coming
It's
up.
a hard job.
Thanks for saying that. Thanks.
Carol Reese, Phippsburg. I just wanted to, my sister had mentioned some things about inconsistency. And so I did want to talk a little bit about that as well, because as you know, as I listened to the student talk about Fine Arts Night, it made me realize, wow, I had been here, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, and there was a huge meet going on here And the inconsistencies are significant. I'm looking around and seeing hundreds, I don't know, 300-400 people in this school. I can't, parents are not allowed in here, and I am so happy that there was a meet going on. Don't get me wrong. I'm so thankful for that. But there's people standing in here with masks down eating, which I have no problem with. But if you're going to sit here and tell the girl that she can't sing in chorus without a mask on, but parents from Madawaska or wherever the hell they're from are going to come in here, take their mask down, eat, stand around, talk. You've got players, coaches everywhere. It's wonderful to see it. I would been happier to see everybody with their mask off, because it was so hot in here and unbearable. I don't know how, they went out. I don't know how many cases of water the kids and parents were coming. It was hot. It was almost unbearable when I was here for a very short period of time. But those inconsistencies are not fair to the kids. So that's what's really, that's what I struggle with. So, if you're going to make this be a thing, but not really, it's time for it to come off, and it's time for the kids to be breathing normal, and I've spoken many times here and said this many times, and not going to change my feelings. I have to, what Charlene says, the kids' mental health, they're suffering right across the board. So when you make decisions, you got to think about what you're already doing. So we've already started, at this point, people are coming in. It's time to open the doors back up and let the communities into the schools and let the kids take the mask off. So thank you.
Thanks, Carol.
Hi, my name's Liberty Wyman. I'm a resident of Phippsburg. I came to speak on behalf of the students here from Morse. I'm a third-year high school student that's graduating early, and a big push for that was due to COVID and how that's affected my high school years. So I've been here for 3 years, and COVID has managed to affect every single one of those years. It's played a huge role on my social aspect. At lunch, being able to only sit with one other person. If you swivel, you get talked to. You get told to constantly pull your mask up when you're just trying to take a breather. And I know how that's had an effect on my mental health. And I can't imagine what it's had an effect on all the other kids' mental health. And so I just feel like at this point, everyone's had the option to get vaccinated. You can still wear a mask if you want to, but it shouldn't be everyone has to. I feel like it's time to start taking the steps to move forward and really valuing mental health over COVID. And if we looked at the herd immunity for our community, I know the number is very high. I know everyone else here tonight has spoken, has said it's time to take the mask off, and I really feel like that should be our next step. Thank you.
Thanks, Liberty.
Hi there, my name's Carl Turner. I'm a resident of West Bath, and I have two daughters in Bath Middle School, one in 7th grade and one in sixth grade. The one thing that I wanted to address, I guess, is this ideology of constantly following the CDC. In the early days of the pandemic, we didn't have anything else to run on, and we didn't know what to do, and we were basically in crisis mode, and it's understandable. But now that we're 2 years out, I feel like our public officials need to kind of weigh public policy versus, public health guidance. And I don't really think that there's a disconnect there anymore. I feel like, we're always waiting for what is the CDC going to say. And, even the email that was sent out, I can't remember if it came out today or yesterday. It kind of shined a light on that as well, is that we're still waiting for CDC guidance, and we're still waiting to hear from the Department of Education, and so on and so on. So I was just doing a little digging, earlier today when I was thinking about coming here, and it just sounds like a lot of the studies that the CDC are doing on masking is just kind of flawed. You know, there's not a lot of controls. The I don't know, but the what it boils down to is they did a study, and you know, states that had mandated masking and states that didn't, you know, there was less than a half a percentage point in case counts, you know, per 100,000. And so I think that just kind of says a lot, you know, that you know the CDC just doesn't want to let go in a sense. And I just think we're at a point now where, you know, we can kind of think for ourselves as to how we want to proceed forward. You know, the CDC is great. We don't have a whole lot else to go on, but I think we need to start weighing public policy, you know, and just the guidance from the CDC to just be a part of it, not just constantly waiting, you know, for what the CDC is going to release. So that's just what I want to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm Melissa Raydell. I'm from West Bath. I am not a resident. However, I am a stakeholder. I'm a teacher in your schools. I was not planning on saying anything tonight. But as I was sitting here listening to conversation about athletics, fine arts, extracurricular, social emotional, all those kinds of decisions, the one thing that I haven't heard is academics. Our kids are suffering for academics. I'm just going to give one small example and then I'll step away. Today, I'm an interventionist. I'm teaching your youngest, your kindergartners, who are already struggling, how to read, how to know their letter sounds. I'm teaching this one sound. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but I'm going to make that sound. I want you to think about which sound it is. The sound is v. V. What sound is it? Is it V or is it the voice TH? My students have no idea which sound I'm teaching them. When they're saying it to me, I have no idea what sound they're giving me. How do I correct when I can't see their lips, their tongue, their teeth? You're challenging our students to learn. Keeping these masks is making it extremely difficult. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. Looks like that's everyone who wanted to speak. I want to thank you all very much for coming and for speaking to this issue. We appreciate it very much. We're going to be addressing this in a few more agenda items down. Obviously, you're welcome to stay if you want to. We will be talking about it and moving forward on this discussion. What do we have next? Committee reports?
Yes.
Can I begin? Okay. So I just have three quick comments to make because I know we have a longer meeting tonight with the discussion later. I just wanted the board to know that the brain days that were mentioned in some of the principal reports for gifted and talented continue bringing fourth and fifth graders together. And I was able to see one recently, and it's one really nice example, I think, of before students go to middle school together, of them getting to meet students that are outside of their own school community. And so I know that was something that the board approved, I think 2 years ago, to happen for the funding for the transportation. And then the extra teacher allows us to separate students into different grade level groups so they get even more attention. And I just saw so many excited faces and kids getting to meet each other that didn't know one another, and it was really wonderful. So I wanted to say thank you for that. As we move into assessment season again this spring, I know that the board has asked questions about whether the move from the SAT to the NUIA test for high schoolers will continue, and the state has said that they're going to continue using the NUIA for all age groups for their state assessments moving forward. And so it seems like that is a change that's going to stick at least for next year. And then the final item I wanted to share is just that I know I spoke, I believe last time, about the possibility of working with Maine Math and Science, and we've officially received their contract and have a tentative draft calendar for K-8. So we'll be able to do professional development moving into the math sphere for next year, and kind of moving along from the reading focus that the board has really supported through the budget. And so that will be something I'll talk to you more about in some budget meetings in terms of the cost of that contract moving forward and the work that we'll be able to do. And that's it.
All right. Any questions for Katie?
I don't have a question, but I do just want to give a comment of praise and thanks for the new format for the principal's reports this month. I found it was very helpful to be able to understand better what's happening, and just wanted to say thank you for everyone who did that.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Katie, just a couple of quick ones. On the SATs, do you know, and I've lost track, would they still be optional for students who wanted to take them?
Yes, we're still going to move forward with hosting some and supporting them because obviously they're a large component of the college application process. That none of that will change.
Okay.
But in terms of what will count as our state assessment for 11th graders, it looks like it's going to be the new year from here on out.
Okay. And then on the Maine Math and Science contract for K-8, if I recall, part of that not only is professional development, part of that, but may even be evaluating a new curriculum. Like I know we use everyday math for, is it K-6?
K-5.
K-5, that's right. It
Yeah.
changed from K-6.
Yeah. So the first component of the contract is for professional development around what the best practices in teaching math are. Then the second component of the contract is putting together committees at both the elementary level and the middle school level to look at our current textbooks, to get feedback on how use of those textbooks is going, but also to look at whether that textbook that we currently use and others out there, which ones best meet teaching in the way the best practices should be presented.
Okay.
So it's kind of a twofold process. And I imagine it won't just be next year, that will continue through the following year as well. But the contract would be a one-year contract.
Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you, Katie. Jonah and Natalie, you guys have a report for us?
Yeah. As far as thoughts on the masking issue go, I figure those can be saved to 11.1. But coming off of February break, not a ton to report about student affairs, especially on the Morse High School side. Our basketball teams, made the tournament automatically this year because it was an open tournament year, but they've made huge strides in the years that I've been here. The girls team especially really struggled for a number of years, and they've made some changes, and they actually played at the Portland Expo and put up a fight against number 2 or 3 seeded team. It was pretty exciting. So athletics have been going pretty well. I'm sure Natalie can attest. For seniors, college choices are starting to get made. Stuff is starting to get narrowed down as we get closer to graduation day.
Yeah, similarly to Jonah, the swim team has also done quite well. Both teams placed 5th at the state meet last week, and we had several top 8 finishers. Not much has been going on, but in terms of college juniors have started looking at college options. We had our first post-secondary planning night. And I also have student feedback on masks, but I'll save it for 11.1.
Weren't you at States?
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Patrick, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I'll be brief. Just wanted to mention first, we had 3 RSU1 teachers that were nominated to be County Teacher of the Year, and they have to go through a process that's pretty comprehensive and could be selected as Maine Teacher of the Year. So congratulations to the nominees, which are Stephen Foster from Morse High School, Sarah Williams from Phippsburg, and Katie Clark from Bath Tech. And, yeah. As you walked in tonight, you probably didn't notice because it was kind of dark, but the car charging stations are now installed at the new school. There's 2 out there, and I'd like to thank Dave Richards and his crew, as well as Bath Electric, for making that happen, as well as the Department of Education for helping to fund that piece. In your backup, you saw a lot of the work that we're doing at Fisher Mitchell, but also at Phippsburg around the Chickadee Book Awards for our younger students. And something kind of neat is our 4th and 5th graders will be reading some of those, but also creating a lesson and an activity that they'll actually present to 3rd graders at Fisher Mitchell. Woolwich 6th grade had a musical performance, which was performed in front of pre-K to 2 students, and it was the first on-stage production they've had in a couple of years, which was great for everyone involved. As you already heard, Fine Arts night is this Wednesday, and not only is that the 1-act play, but it's also visual arts presentations by students, as well as musical performances. And students already mentioned a few of these things, but I'll just go over them real quick. Boys and girls both won the KVAC championship in swimming, and as Natalie mentioned, they both came in 5th at the state championship. Wrestling was runner-up for the KVAC Class B championship and 5th at the state championship, and 8 wrestlers competed at states. And the boys and girls basketball both hosted a playoff game, and the girls won a playoff game for the first time since 2016. And then lastly, if you really want some enjoyment, I would encourage you to take in a unified basketball game, and that schedule is in full swing. And the next 2 home games, March 10th here against Westbrook at 4 o'clock, and March 15th at 3:30 against Brunswick. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Patrick. Any questions for Patrick? All right, thank you for the good news. Deb?
Good evening, folks. Tonight, we're looking at the month of January for our financial report. So we're into the 7th month, a little bit over halfway. And as you can see, we've spent about $21 million, which is about 54%. So our spending is in line with our timing somewhat. Everything seems to be going well. As transportation, like I had told you, we expect to be a little over on that. Keeping my eyes on the utilities right now because of the new Morse High School, and this is really our learning year as far as what's actually going to take to run this new high school. Revenues, we're in at 58.8%, so we're a little bit higher, and that basically is because of our additional subsidy that's coming through, which we knew about at the beginning of the year. Our grants, the ESSER1 will be projected about 1.8% remaining at the end of the year, and we're working on trying to spend those funds before any others. ESSER2, we're looking at about 81% that we'll have spent. And once again, we're trying to hit those grants before the other ones have to be spent down. And then the ARP, we've just basically started spending that. We had some renovation projects that we worked on there. Morse High School, we're down to under $500,000. So we have two expenses basically that will use most of that, and that's the balance of Harvey Construction and Crooker. So we're pretty much, we're pretty much within every line budget for that project. And that's it.
Great, thanks, Deb. Any questions for Deb? Yeah, go ahead, Lauren.
Not really a question. I just want to thank you again for this every month. And I know we're starting budget season, and I know we're just going to be asking a lot of questions. And so just thank you, really.
welcome.
If we don't have questions, it
I
doesn't
know it's
mean.
kind of boring.
No, it
sometimes.
seems boring, but I just want to thank you because there's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And the reason I don't have a lot of questions is because it's always very straightforward.
Well, and it's because she's saving them up for later this month.
Oh, that's true too.
Thank you. So just a reminder then, March 10th, we'll also
March
see you
10th.
all.
Yes, thank you.
Yep, thank you, Deb. That's starts the marathon. Thank you. Okay, so we don't have anything under old business. So new business, 11.1, here we go. Revisit health and safety protocols. Do you want to start us off, Patrick?
I'm not going to speak very long. I'm just going to let the board, Dr. Hannah is on the line for any questions that the board has. As Lou mentioned before, prior to last Friday or Saturday, it was communicated to us that the Maine CDC was going to monitor and probably recommend some changes very soon, let it be the first or second week in March. And then again, Friday night, Saturday, the US CDC announced a different metric of looking at it. And again, you may not agree with this, and I certainly understand that, but it's determined by looking at hospital beds being used, hospital admissions, and total number of new COVID cases in the area. And currently, Saginaw County, and you may wonder why this is, but currently the US CDC has Saginaw County as considered high when you go to there and look at those metrics. Positive cases, as you probably know, if you looked at our website, our positive cases since January 14th, our weekly positive cases have decreased from 128 on 114 to 23 the week ending 2/18, which is right before break, which is, again, all very positive. Not positive, but encouraging, I guess I would say. Staff surveys, these are just approximates. Staff surveys for the staff, 70% to 30% were in favor of optional masking. Again, that was one staff survey. The other staff survey was more of a union one, and that was around 60-30. 7 was, was kind of labeled as conditional, and that was mostly around the fact of, just feeling like weather was mentioned in there about, is this the right time to do it? But also just in general about if they could make sure that they could continue to wear their masks if they'd like to. So there's just some things like that in there. Students, 70-30 in favor of, and parents, I think it was 78-22 around there. So last thing I'll just say, our data is moving in the right direction, and the majority of our community supports optional masking. When masking becomes optional, there'll be people that will be happy and relieved, and there'll be people that will be anxious and fearful. And that's, students, teachers, and parents on both sides of that. As people said tonight, it's been a long 2 years with a lot of different emotions. And the last thing I'll just say is, we tried to work hard to ensure a layered approach for the safety and health of our students and staff. And when this does happen, just remind people that 2 years ago, we didn't have vaccinations, we didn't have pool testing, distancing, and upgraded air ventilation. So when masking becomes optional, we will still have those things, in the system. So we supplied the board with a lot of information and data. And like I said, Dr. Hannah is on the line tonight to share her advice and answer any questions that you might have.
Great, thank you. So we've heard from the public. I've made some comments. So as Patrick, I'd like to open it to the board. Questions, concerns as we talk about it. And maybe, I don't know, maybe we want to hit Jonah and Natalie. You said you had some. Maybe why don't we start with you two? And if you could share what you know, and then we can let the board ask some questions and then determine what we're doing. Thank you.
I guess, starting from an individual perspective and then maybe zooming out. I contracted COVID the Friday before February break, and I would not recommend it. It was difficult, but I turned out okay. And were masks to be optional? This actually had me thinking, because I was, inside for a while. Were masks optional in the district? I would probably continue to wear mine, because had I that Friday, when I had tested positive, gone to school without a mask, I would likely have transmitted it to more people. So, the science says a lot about different types of masks and whatnot, but in surveys accredited and, cited by hundreds, the efficacy of masks in terms of limiting transmission from confirmed carriers is undeniable. But as many have said at this point, especially in extracurricular activities, mask wearing in a lot of cases has become more performative than an actual tactic at reducing disease transmission. So it's important to consider, situations like that where maybe we want to be more consistent in terms of there's extracurriculars where it may be easier to not wear a mask, but in the classroom, those who feel more comfortable wearing one should wear them. My views in terms of COVID-19 are being vaccinated and wearing a mask is the best for yourself and others. But I feel as though when masks are not the number one factor that are limiting disease transmission, as you said, there's new tools at our disposal. Maybe it's important, coming up on 2 years out, to start maybe taking a step back there and realizing that whether it's theater or not, maybe it's not the best way forward.
I have not had COVID yet. I know, although a lot of people at Morse have. I know I've talked to a lot of students about it, and I've had several talk to me and ask me to present their views. Most of the people who've talked to me are pro-mask, and I know there have been some people who have spoken out on Instagram who are expressing concern. One person says they believe that optional masking is something that could potentially lead to more distance learning, and they're very afraid of that. I know that the people I have talked to, most students who support optional masking seem to support it because they see it as a nuisance and as an inconvenience, whereas most of the people who support masking are genuinely afraid and concerned that if we make masking optional, it will put their health and safety at risk, and it will put the health and safety of their loved ones at risk. And I think from a student perspective, that viewpoint is it's very strong in the people that are afraid and anxious. And I think that we should consider all of those opinions. I personally support masking, and I think that even if it's just for the rest of the school year, I think that it would be consistent, and I think that it would be a good idea to keep it for the rest of the year and then reevaluate in the summer and potentially come back mask optional this fall. And a lot of people talked about consistency in terms of sporting events and school assemblies and the lunch with the dots. And I know that along the same lines, consistency is the reason I think the school board has followed the main CDC so carefully, is that that's what we said we were going to do at the beginning, and I think we followed that through. And in terms of guidelines, you know that the school board is going to be following what the main CDC says, and I know that that has been a very consistent measure. And if we start picking and choosing the guidelines we want to follow, you lose that consistency, and I think it becomes a lot more confusing. But I would also say I agree with Nina. Things like singing and sporting events, it may be a good idea to relook at masking for those specific extracurricular activities.
The amount of nuance in people's opinions that you'll find is immense. I don't like a survey may not accurately represent everyone's personal thoughts and opinions and the conditions they might have when it comes to masking. But the survey responses, when they came back, I expected a majority of the community to be in favor of optional masking, but 70% is a much louder number than I was expecting. And we are not elected by votes as student representatives. We're appointed to represent whole viewpoints as opposed to our own. And those are large numbers we're talking about. And it's not as if a revocation of a mask mandate would be permanent, in the sense that if we saw dangers in our community, it could always be the best decision to maybe go back. But as for right now, I think the numbers are leaning one way as opposed to another in terms of people's opinions.
Thank you both for your articulate answers. I want to open it to the board, rest of the board, for comment, for questions. Remember, Dr. Hannah's on, or for the students.
Thank you. I just, I want to thank everyone who's here tonight, everyone who has emailed us over the past 2 years, because all of the points that we're hearing from both sides are very valid, and we have to sort of validate that an answer for one person is going to not be the answer for the other person. And weighing those things, I think, is very important to recognize, but also to validate. It's very valid to hear what Natalie is saying. It's very valid to hear what Jonah is saying, or Waylon, or Nina, all of these different viewpoints. It has been a very long 2 years. And I would echo a lot of what I'm hearing from parents, in that I'm very concerned about the mental health of our youth at this point, outweighing the risk of COVID, when I see so many young people disconnecting and isolating at a point, especially for middle and high schoolers, where it's so important for their development. It concerns me greatly to hear about children not being able to learn how to say their letters, which is affecting their ability to read at such a young age. As much as masks do protect us, they, I think, do harm us in different ways. And it's just trying to figure out sort of the off ramp. How do we do this in a way that is respectful for everyone? There are a lot of questions. I know that there are students who are too young to be vaccinated, and how do we protect our pre-K students at the same time? So I think there's a lot of questions that I have, and I'm hoping that I can articulate them properly. And I don't know if we all want to have Dr. Hannah present and then ask questions, or do we just ask as we go?
Okay, do you want to, I can ask her. Dr. Hannah, are you on?
Yes, I'm on.
Yeah, hi. Would you mind telling us, have you been able to hear the different things, what people have been asking and talking about? Could you give us kind of where you see things are now, and, where they're headed, so we kind of, get a base point from you?
Yeah, so I have to say I'm cautiously optimistic, maybe more cautiously optimistic than I felt in a couple of years, for a number of reasons. But one of the questions that was asked of me last week was just to bring hospital rates. But I think this was before the CDC issued its guidance. But we are seeing lower rates of hospitalizations here in our local community. Right now, we've got 5 patients that are being treated for COVID. A month ago, that was 17, so that's a pretty significant difference. I see it in my own practice, whereas a month ago, 6 weeks ago, I felt like that was all I was seeing. I'm not seeing a lot of it anymore. It's not gone. I'm still making phone calls to families, but it's definitely decreased. I'm excited that we have some metrics that we can follow for masking that allows us to pivot quickly based on our community rates. And they've gone with admissions, and someone pointed out that it wasn't pediatric admissions, but really they used admissions, hospital admissions, new admissions, and percent of staffed inpatient beds with COVID patients, really to give a barometer of what's happening in a community, because a lot of people are doing home tests, and so those aren't necessarily being calculated in, so it's a little hard to follow like a community rate. But if you look at hospital admissions and people in with COVID, that does give you a different barometer of what's happening in a community. So I think that part is very helpful, because they are releasing data on that every week, and so if there is something that's changing, you can pick up on it pretty quickly. My understanding is that the Maine CDC is going to be releasing some new or guidance that's in line with federal CDC, but they're also, I think, it's my understanding from speaking with others that part of what their calculation is going to include is also school outbreak status, which makes sense because that's definitely more of a pediatric data point that they can follow. But I think everybody just wants to see what happens after the February bump that, you know, you kind of expect a bump when people go on vacation or they've, you know, been together in a less controlled setting. So I think that's part of why you know, there's this this wanting to give it a couple of weeks to look at their numbers before they release their official guidance. But I have to say I'm pretty optimistic about where we're headed, and that I think that, you know, like I said, I feel like I've been optimistic in the past, but I'm more optimistic now that we're getting closer to a point where masks can be optional. And that doesn't mean that if you didn't want to wear a mask, I mean, that if you wanted to wear a mask, you couldn't. But I think we're getting closer to that. But I think that we have followed CDC recommendations all along, and I think our school has done quite well. We stayed open, and I feel like continuing to follow their recommendations makes sense. They're the scientists with the data, so it makes sense to follow what they're recommending. So.
Dr. Hanna, do you think that when do you think they're going to? Are they waiting 2 weeks? Are they saying things, you know, we're not seeing a huge bump, or even if it's a bump, they know? I mean, what's stopping them from like saying, okay, let's go mask optional on the 14th? Or when would they, you know, are they saying when they would make some kind of announcement, or what do they have to wait for?
Well, I think everybody is kind of waiting to see what the bump is from February break, and that takes about 2 weeks to understand that. So I think that is why there's a little bit of a delay.
Any other questions for Jen?
Yeah, Dr. Hanna, could you just clarify that why what the 2 weeks means? Why, I don't want to say wait, but like why wait 2 weeks? What's the science, the data, and the reasoning behind using that time measure?
Yeah, so the reason is that when you have a bump in rates, there's gonna be a little bit of delay in number one, the testing of people, and number two, to determine how much that's going to spread. So, you know, if you have, you know, a handful of people who wind up with it, they're going to spread to a few more people. They could spread to a few more people. So you're really looking at, you know, how much that spread is going to take place. So when you look at incubation periods of the current circulating strain, after a couple of weeks, you're going to have a pretty good idea of whether or not we have a bump in cases based on our recent break.
So it's not just a delay of making a decision, it's an actual study of incubation of the virus. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. And numbers based on that. Yes.
Thank you.
I have a question. Dr. Hanna, we've been hearing news and reading news about a new variant. Could you talk about that and how, at this point, I'm hearing a lot of people saying that we're moving from a pandemic to the endemic. And could you maybe explain what that means for us if we are again seeing another variant? How is that different than what we were sort of facing last fall?
Yeah, so the new variant is it's related. It's similar to Omicron, which we just had, and so we do have 2 cases that are documented in Maine. But the feeling is that with the number of people who ended up with Omicron, that is unlikely to cause the same sort of surge that we just experienced within the last 6 weeks. So yes, though there is the circulating new variant and they're following it closely, right now the hope is that that's not really going to be the experience that we just went through. And then in terms of, moving from epidemic to endemic, it basically means that we're learning to live with a disease. And part of living with a disease is utilizing all of the strategies and tools that you have. And as you said, there's ventilation, there's distancing, but part of it is also saying that, okay, now we can follow data points looking at case rates and things that strain a community, like overall hospitalization rates and whether or not a hospital is filled to capacity and doesn't have the option of taking care of other things. So we can follow that and adjust our behavior based on what we're seeing in a community. And then when rates go down, we go back to a more normal way of life. But this likely is going to be how we have to deal with this going forward. And it doesn't mean that we're always going to be, masking forever. It means that we need to be able to pivot when it's appropriate, and then we go back to, being without them. So I don't know if I explained that well enough.
Yes, thank you. And one other question about vaccines for younger children. Have there been any more developments around that?
Not currently. So, well, not positive developments in that they have not given us a date when we can expect to have vaccinations for the 4 and under age group. The testing that they did didn't show the immune response that they were hoping to have with a 2-dose series, and so the question is it necessary for a 3-dose, or do we really need to be reformulating the vaccine because the variants have changed so much from the original? So there are big brains working on that, but they haven't let us know when there is going to be a vaccine available. I hope soon.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Dr. Hannah, hi. It's not really a question. I just wanted to share some stuff that I kind of noodled out of the internet off the CDC website. And in talking to colleagues in other districts who sit on school boards who are in the same boat we are. And if you have a chance to comment on any of them, that would be great. But, my whole weekend, my family was ready to kill me because I was so upset at the federal guidelines, which put 13 out of 16 of our counties in high risk. And so Somerset stuck out at me because about a month ago, Somerset was getting shamed as the county with the lowest vaccination and the highest hospitalizations, and they're rural and all other nice pleasantries as to why they were having a bad time of it. And they're one of the counties now in middle, like moderate status, whatever the term is, that's not high. And so then I got online and I was looking at their hospitalization just for February by county. Hospitalizations for Saginaw County were 9, Somerset was 18, Kennebec was 19. Those two are middle or moderate risk, and Waldo was 5, which is less than us. And there's more data that really shows Saginaw County as the third lowest for cumulative cases. All other counties are much higher than us. So this is the challenge we face as a school board. We're just normal people running businesses, being teachers, community directors, helping our youth, and there's no data that makes sense. And I'm not saying that to attack you, but at all. But when we say, well, when hospitalizations go down, what does that mean? I mean, Midcoast Parkview, I got something from the CDC today from my colleague on the other board, is a serving hospital serving Lisbon, Durham, Sabattis, North Yarmouth, Freeport. So I don't know how we're ever going to get out of high status if they're looking at all of those other towns and other counties with us. So that's, when I think the public gets very frustrated because it's all about control. Maybe we're just trying to keep masks on kids. It's really hard. So I'm just kind of unloading all this as part of the conversation, but when hospitalizations go down, what does that mean? What's the number? Do you know? Like, am I trying to simplify it too much? I'll just let you comment on all of that. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know if I can comment on all of it, but you know, there are specific metrics. I mean, if you look at, you know, the on the CDC, they actually do have like a section where they talk about number of hospitalizations per 100,000 population over a 7-day period of time. And your hospitalization catchment area, you're right, it may cross certain counties, but you know, that is, but there are numbers specifically on hospitalization numbers per 100,000, which is separate. So, you know, I don't know that I'm going to give you like, I'm not the CDC person, so I can't give you like their full, you know, way that they've calculated it. But there, I mean, if you delve into it, there are specific numbers that you can use to follow the when you move from low to moderate to high risk.
And I'm wondering, I wanted to thank actually Katie or whoever put together our data. There was a COVID map of trending, and maybe this is the one you're talking about I think it's from the Mayo Clinic. So according to Mayo Clinic, per 100,000, Saginaw County had 121.1, Somerset again 176.6, Kennebec 181.7, and Waldo County 149. All of them are higher than us. So again, I just had to get it out there because we try to make decisions on data and I don't understand it as I make these decisions. But Saginaw seems to be low. And so when we say we're high, I'm just trying to reconcile it. I appreciate the comment about the variant, the subvariant. I'm glad to hear you say that because I know the WHO made a statement last week, and thankfully the difference in between the two is not as drastic between Omicron and Delta as far as transmissibility. So that's awesome. So thank you for weighing in on that. I don't want to monopolize.
No, it's okay. Thank you. I mean, some of it was per capita, just from Saginaw County is like population is really small. And so some of those numbers, I'm not saying it solves all the issues, but some of those numbers are because of that. But I still, what you're saying still makes sense to me. But is there any other, haven't heard from all the board yet. Anybody else want to weigh in? Yeah,
Sorry.
go ahead.
Sorry. So, I mean, I'll, be brief. The board, doesn't reconvene for another month in a manner like this. I mean, it's a little less than that, I think, but still. So is there like one piece of like keystone data or something that we should look out for between now and then, no matter how we decide today, to sort of inform future decisions?
Is that a question for Dr. Hannah?
Maybe.
Did you hear that, Dr. Hannah?
I did, yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't know that there's one particular keystone piece of data other than, I mean, I think that there are a number of different things that go into this. I mean, one is, hospital utilization, and again, as our barometer for what's happening in a community, and part of it is, I mean, I think that my understanding is they likely will still be looking at outbreak status within schools. So, I mean, we'll have an idea of cases within our school over this next couple of weeks because we're still going to hopefully be keeping track of those. So, I think all of that kind of goes into the equation as we try to figure out what our numbers are over this next 2 weeks. So, but I can't say that there's one specific number that we're looking at or that they are looking at.
Okay, thank you. All right, so are there any other comments? No? Yeah, go ahead, Jen.
So I guess it just starts to kind of, I would start to say that, that as a board member, I have a three-pronged approach when I'm looking at these issues. I have first and always think of the safety of children and how that works, not unfortunately for one child, but all the children in the district, and balance that. The next thing I have to look at is the safety and health, and I haven't heard a lot about tonight, but our staff, because when we're looking at the impacts of COVID, even if you think that there is a large or small impact directly to students, we can't have our schools open if there's no staff to staff them. And so the impact to adults is also part of my decision-making when it comes to how we're responding to this. We've had to close our schools because we didn't have staff, which brings me to the third-pronged approach, which keeping our schools open is one of the strongest things that weigh in on my decision-making process, not just because keeping schools open means serving the mental health and the academics of our children. It also allows parents to go to work and be able to support financially their families, to pay the heat bills and the food bills, and to be able to keep their kids in a shelter. So when I look at these items, I think about them in a three-pronged approach. I try to do my homework. It may look like I'm waiting for someone else to make a decision, but I'm taking the time to think deeply, to study a lot of different points of view, to be able to pull in all of those resources to know what to do. And I do have to lean on expert advice because I'm not an epidemiologist, I'm not a physician, I'm not a heating and ventilation expert. So I have to have the time to learn from other specialists who have a long history of professional understanding in these areas. And as I'm making these decisions, I am not just choosing to, but we have to follow the regulations and the statutes that are implemented in our state as a public school by the governing bodies. So it may look like to the public that we have full decision-making to do anything we want, but there's a lot of requirements that are put upon us to be able to have a school open. What kind of staff is in there? To be able to have someone drive a school bus, what kind of certification and training they need. If we don't protect the school bus drivers and the janitors and the cooks and the teachers and the administrators, no matter how well our children are, our school doors will be closed because we can't legally have them open unless we have the adults. And we are constantly struggling to try to find substitute teachers even with our system. And so that shows that we are not just only looking at protecting the health of children. We have a complex system and we have to keep all the pieces going in order to have that school door open in the morning and have the place for children to come that is safe, that they can learn, and have parents be able to go to work. So and I think that I would feel comfortable saying that the entire school board has this same very thorough and very learned approach to learn from each other who's on the board that has specialties, and also the other professionals in our community. So it's not with something that is made for entertainment in any capacity that we address these situations. And it is very difficult. One of the things that I'm kind of surprised in hearing, and I was made a point, was that our students on our board talked not only in terms of me and my and I, they did lend their personal experience, but they didn't say COVID is X because I experienced it this way. They said, I experienced this way and I understand the impact to the greater world that I live in, the greater community I live in. And I'm impressed with people of that age and that amount of living life, that the experience I have, that they think not only as the me and my and I, but also as the we and us. And I applaud them for that, because it's hard when you are so focused on how things are happening to you. I appreciate that there needs to be time to look at the as Dr. Hannah said, the incubation of what's going to happen the next couple weeks, which isn't just passive waiting, it's studying something as it develops, which I think is important. If we move to change our masking policy, I am going to ask strongly to the board that we memorialize in any decision we make the words in it we'll have when we're going to, if we need to pivot, how we pivot and when we pivot. I want that embedded in the very vote that we take, because it will be clear to us and be clear to the next decision why we need to make another decision. It's not just us looking at something different. It will be, those words will help guide us. And I think that's important in any vote that we do for this. I want to make the best decision for everybody, and I want children to have the events and the hallmarks of education that they've grown to rely on, and I want to have them to be healthy bodies to continue, and I want it, and it's a balance, and it's not a perfect scenario. We're just trying to put all those things together as best as possible. So I guess I would end it by saying that I've often heard this statement that says, "Thank you for your service." And I know it's often said to military people, but I think that in some ways, with what our children and our staff throughout the district have had to do in the last 2 years, I think it also applies to people that are willing to come to schools and help children learn every day. And I think that we also need to say we thank them for their service and well. So with that, I'm anxious to hear what the rest of the board has to say, and want to look forward to how we move forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. Any other, Jamie?
I actually have additional questions if Dr. Hannah is still with us.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Going back to our pre-K students, you know, I'm a mother of, you know, young adults at this point, so I'm trying to put myself back into the position of a young family, thinking about preschoolers, and probably at home there are toddlers and newborns. And I guess my question is, when we move to optional masking, how do we best protect people who are not able to be vaccinated, who do have younger siblings at home, or people that are immunocompromised?
So a decision to go mask optional doesn't mean that people can't wear a mask, you know, even if the community rates are low. So, you know, if someone has an immunocompromised family member or family members that are at risk, they can continue to wear a mask, and probably should do so, because it does reduce the likelihood that they would contract it. Right now, it does not, they are not tying masking to vaccination rates, which is a little different. There were some studies in other areas where they had looked at if you have a certain vaccination rate and then this was your community rate, whether or not that should be implemented. They're not doing that. So I think for the younger kids, you know, I think that if family members are looking for the best way that they can protect their own loved ones, then they can wear a mask. You know, I think that if we can, you know, if we can get to the point where, you know, there's more vaccinations, I think that would be great. You know, if they can have parents who are vaccinated or parents who are protected, there's less of a likelihood they're going to contract it that way. I mean, so there are ways that they can reduce their risk to try to make it so that they're not, you know, they're not contracting it at home or not contracting it with other family members.
Great, thank you. I think, you know, for me, one of the challenges is I can't find sense in what the CDC has done since Friday. Whereas all along, I understood that the Maine Department of Education said universal masking means that our kids are going to be in school. You know, it made sense to me. what's happened since Friday is not making sense to me, and I'm having a very hard time
Right.
understanding how to move forward
Well-
when so many people overwhelmingly are saying that they are suffering from wearing a mask. The academics are suffering, social emotional health is suffering, extracurricular activities are suffering. And somehow I have to say we're at high risk here in Saginaw County when I can go to Florida and be totally fine. It doesn't make sense to me. And that's what I'm really struggling
Right.
with tonight.
And I think that's why, like I said, before that had happened, and this is something we all have to think about. Before that had happened, we all thought we were coming here tonight, and it was really looking like, and maybe it still will. We haven't heard from the state, but the reason we didn't put it on the agenda of okay, we're making this decision was like, hey, they're gonna by mid-March, we're done. This is it. The state's gonna do it. We're good. And because of the federal doing what they did, that threw everything off. And so now, we can, one option is, okay, wait, but another option is saying, we're going to monitor where we are on our own school outbreak status. And tonight say, and if that's all looking good, we go mask optional March 14th. We can do that if that's something the board wants to do. And say, and put in the language you want. Because if we say, oh, there is an outbreak, okay, maybe it has to be one more week if we have to wear masks. But to state that this is our intent and this is where we are going, because we know our community and we know where we are now. And again, it's not, I agree with you. Everything has made a lot of sense, even though I didn't like it. A lot of it made sense. I didn't agree with having to wear masks during extracurriculars. I still don't. I would want to get rid of that immediately. But, her kid and my kid are in the fine arts, so I probably have to abstain from voting on that one. But, I didn't want it for the sports. But I understood during the outbreak status that was going on in January, we had to do that. When you talk 100 and something in January and now we're down to 20, that's huge. And so again, I'm just saying what hasn't changed is we all came with the intent that we were going to probably be mask optional by mid-March anyway. And probably because that's what the main CDC was going to do. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying we decided that was the best. Just because the federal has these bizarre statistics on it, I'm not sure that we should change that. That's my opinion. And as chair, I don't throw out the motion, so someone else would have to. But I think it's worth exploring that to say, barring another, some big outbreak, that's the direction we move towards, because we are at a place where which is outweighing which. The masks did a lot of good work, but now we're at a place where it's obviously doing harm. So, because we've just been doing it too long and it's not the crisis it was. I'm not, belittling. It's a terrible disease, but it's not the crisis it was. So, I think instead of trying to make sense of all, we asked the questions, you got some information, you've got a lot of data, but instead of trying to make sense of all that data, let's look at where we've been, where it looks like we're still going. And as a board, that's your option. It's, do you want to just stay where we are and wait, or do you want to put a date out there and say, barring anything else, in the next 2 weeks, we'll go mask optional. Patrick will tell us if he needs more time. And again, it's not about the mask at that point. It's about, are we okay then letting in the community? Are we okay? Because we want to do all that. It's all the other stuff that goes with it. And if the administration says, yeah, we're good with that, then that would be the date. If we had to push it back a few days, fine. But I'm just saying that's another option. And so, you should think about that before. Yeah, Anita.
I feel like we have all the information that we need at this point. I don't see it. I think there's some hesitancy, feeling like maybe there are some gray areas still, but I really don't see it that way. I think the very point that Lorna raised about the hospitalization numbers speak for themselves. The fact that we were classified in Saginaw County as high risk, I think, is erroneous, and I think it's a function of the backlog of tests that we had because of the surge at the end of November and through December. It was crazy during that time in our schools and in our community. But when we look at, the hard fact that our rate is very low, that our cumulative rates are the third lowest in the state, when you look at the CDC data, you look at our immunization rates in our schools and know our younger children, the rates are lower. That's a function of the fact that they're younger and it's not as accessible to them. The people most at risk for illness or complications because of COVID-19 are our staff and teachers because they're older. Our vaccination rates are 80 to 90% among that population, and the remaining of them have probably already been exposed or had it. I think that continuing to burden our children with the responsibility to protect the adults in their community has passed. There was a time when we were in a crisis and that was where we were, and we had to make that hard decision. I think that time has passed and our children should not be bearing that burden any longer.
Am I hearing a motion?
Yeah.
So what, do you want to make a motion?
Sure, I say we move that we give the administration the next 2 weeks to develop a SOP that is specific to our district, that addresses the concerns that Jennifer has. You can speak to those, and that we make masking optional in our schools effective in 2 weeks.
Okay, so that's a motion. I need a second.
Second.
And Bill seconds it. So motion by Anita, seconded by Bill, and now we can have a discussion. So go ahead, Natalie.
I had a couple of questions for Dr. Hannah. I know mental health has been brought up a lot, and I was wondering if there's a direct correlation between masking and mental health, or if the mental health crisis has been more connected to the pandemic as a whole as opposed to masking specifically.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think the pandemic as a whole has weighed on the mental health of not just students, but adults too. And I think when adults are struggling, they have trouble supporting their kids because they are also struggling. I think the pandemic has been hard on everybody. So I wouldn't necessarily say that is a masking issue. I would say that not being able to attend school, that was a big deal. So times when schools shut down, times when there was distance learning, that was a big impact. I have to be honest. When I see kids, particularly younger kids, they don't actually seem to care much about wearing the mask. Teenagers, when I talk with them alone, it's not so much that they're talking about masking as the root of their mental health concerns if they're coming in with that. And I do see lots of kids with that. But there are a lot of other just societal factors that are playing a part in their mental health worries and concerns and issues. So I don't know that I would pin the blame on masking. It sounds like within the people that are there are some that feel that is the root of what's going on with their kids, and I can't speak to that, but I just from what I'm seeing in the office and speaking with kids more privately, that's not necessarily coming up as the root of their issues.
Well, and it's the masking, which I think it's associated with the fact that so many of our events and different things that we normally would have, we didn't have. And so it's associated with it, whether it's directly to that. That's a big part of it too. But we have a motion on the floor, so we need to address things to the motion. No, go, Katie.
I just have a clarifying question. So I think part of the motion was that we would write our own SOP, but a standard operating procedures includes a lot more than just masking. And so as one of the people who'd probably help write that, I just want clarification, because the way that this has worked over the past 2 years, it seems like it could paint any pattern to anything is the federal CDC says something, everyone gets confused by it for a few days because the state CDCs need to catch up, and the state CDC is probably doing that right now. and talking with the Department of Education, and we'll be rewriting the SOP. They're probably doing that right now. And so I think probably we would have a lot less to talk about if this very meeting was a week later than it is right now.
Right.
And so I just want clarity when Patrick and I leave here. Should we get a new SOP that has updates? Is it just, if it says that if you're in the red, which we currently are, right? That masking, universal masking is still required. Is that the only part, should the board vote yes right now, that we would be looking to change? Or I guess I just want clarity around what specifically you would like us to do, because probably by the end of this week, we'll have a new SOP and it will say something about masking in it.
Do you want to address that, Anita?
I was just gonna say, my greatest concern is that I just don't want to put it off a whole lot longer to say, well, let's wait and see what the state CDC rewrites and then the DOE responds to, and then we're 2 weeks more out, and then we make a decision in 2 weeks, and then our administrators still need time to write, to have that local policy written and put in place and have all the staff up to speed and give everyone time to adjust, and then we're a month from now.
So
How far are we willing to, how much longer are we willing to
no,
wait?
so would you want to amend? So you could amend the motion to be that what we're looking for is some basic concepts for making it mask optional by March 14th. And then we should put in there, and if the state comes up with something within those 2 weeks that we need to address, we call another meeting to adjust that aspect of it.
Sure.
But they've already let go of certain things in the SOP, which has allowed us this freedom to consider this, where before we were getting penalized for wanting to do it. So now we have that freedom. Maybe we limit it to the masking for now. And if something comes up from the state, I don't know, it's just a suggestion, but it's your motion.
That makes perfect sense. I mean,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but does the SOP right now we could just do the no masking and keep everything the same. They're just not recommending mask optional right now.
Right, they're not recommending it.
But they're not requiring it either. So
no, they weren't requiring it before, but they were making us do all kinds of other stuff. But now that they've let that go, you're right. All I'm saying
there's no
is
contact tracing.
Right, because they let go of the contact trace. All I'm saying is if we did it now, then if they come up with something new that we didn't know about, I'm just saying we could come back together for a meeting to say, what do we need to do about that aspect or whatever. But you're right, absolutely. We could do that. So I guess I would be looking for a modification. Or Jen, do you want to speak first before she modifies her motion? Go ahead.
Well, so if we're considering a modification, I guess my question would be to Patrick and Katie, what's a reasonable time frame of all the things that they would need to address to be able to pivot to optional masks? I don't know all the many, many details and many, many things that are impacted by that. So I don't know if you could give a decision or a statement on this at this moment, but if you can't, could you tell us how long this would take to effectively change how classrooms and schools function if the only thing we change is masking? We leave everything else in place. It's just the optional masking. What would that change look like for time frame?
Go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, I think coming into this meeting tonight, that's kind of what we were anticipating, because this is what 2-week period, because that's what the main CDC has communicated to us that we would expect to change by then. Again, like somebody mentioned, I think it was Jamie, that, over this weekend, it did throw us off a little bit that what looked like was promising news, but then put us in a red category. So that throws a little monkey wrench into it. But I think, it's clear that if somebody has COVID and they come back and, days 6 through 10, they're wearing a mask. So, I mean, that's pretty concrete. I'm not sure I like it because well, I guess I shouldn't say that because there'll be other students and staff that'll choose to wear a mask. So it wouldn't be singling, students or staff out in my mind. And then I think, one other, I guess, little things that we just need to work out is, if a say an elementary student parent wants them to wear a mask, student comes to school and takes their mask off and doesn't want to wear it, I think that's, it's going to be something that, just little things like that we have to, work with families on. But no, I think 2 weeks is what we kind of anticipated coming into, this evening. I don't think it's something where we have to, rewrite an SOP. I think it's going to be, honestly, I think it's going to come for us. And really it's masks are optional. So some people will wear them and some people will choose not to.
Excuse me, we just have to do a quick vote to let's, can I just have a quick vote? All in favor of going back there? Yeah, okay, thank you. All right, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in the emotion of the moment, I may have misappropriated the term SOP. So I'm happy to amend that motion to reflect that we would address masking only tonight, which is really what the intent of what I was speaking to.
You okay with that? Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's it. Any further discussion?
Lou, oh, sorry, I do have a question because I would like to address it. We had a student here tonight who is going to be performing in 2 nights. And I want to at least address her request, which was to drop it immediately for the fine arts performance. Could we utilize the abundance of testing that we have to say that a student would need to test negative and then for the performance only be masked?
When they're on stage.
Yeah,
Like I said.
is that something that we would do separately or include in
I would
this?
do a separate.
Okay,
I would think.
I'll wait.
Unless.
So I think I know we're figuring all this out on how to make the motion. So what I had put together as I was thinking of things and listening to everyone, the motion that I thought, and this could be like, I can formally amend it, but let me just say it and then I can amend it formally. So what I had thought, listening to everyone and looking at data over the last week, is that I know it's easier if we just follow in lockstep with Maine CDC, but we've talked about a lot tonight. I think we've heard from the community, and we've looked at the data. This board has also advocated for our teachers by pressuring the state in the past to prioritize them for vaccines. And as we've said, our rates look good. We know our community and parents do know their kids. We might not always agree with the decisions parents make, but parents know their children. And my motion was going to be that I advocate for a mask optional policy in our schools starting March 14th, which includes providing authorization for Patrick and administration to make optional masking in situations they deem appropriate before March 14th if necessary. And I can formally amend.
Okay, well, we still have the other one on the table though. So,
Right, so-
so go ahead, Jen.
Not to be too much of a stickler, but I think a good way to approach the changes is to ask for a friendly amendment is kind of the Roberts rules. And
That's true.
so it would be, if you were to ask permission for the person who made the motion, if they would allow a friendly amendment to replace or to change their amendment by adding these couple of things. And sometimes that helps keep track of what the words are.
That's true. Yeah, you're right. Thank you.
So the only amendment I would make is that if we could allow some authorization for Patrick administration to make it optional before March 14th if they deem necessary, and that's where they could address something that may come up that they could talk to internally, knowing their resources and availability to make it optional.
Yeah, as to whether they can do it or not.
Right.
Okay. Anita, and Bill, that would be attached to your motion.
Yes, that I would.
You'll
agree to
accept that?
Yeah.
All right, well, Patrick, you want to comment?
Yeah, I'm just, that, that last piece, I just have to speak to that, is we've been, I know people have spoken tonight about, you go to watch a basketball tournament that the MPA puts on and you got this going on. You got pictures in the paper that you got this going on. We've done our best to try to enforce that, to be as consistent as possible. I know schools across the state have. We just ended a winter sports season, and those student athletes had to abide by those recommendations, whether we liked it or not. And so I think, I would be more comfortable with a vote tonight being that going forward, or as of March 14th, or starting tomorrow, for not, if it's for performances, that it just should be across the board. It shouldn't be this optional thing where, we heard about inconsistencies tonight. That we've got one building advocating for it and another building not because of comfort level. So I really think if there's going to be, if March 14th for everyone isn't going to just be the motion and there's going to be something else added to it, I would just advocate for that to be just a decision tonight, not some optional thing that allows, us to make decisions when you've got a student that's walking down the hall that maybe just participated in a wrestling match
Well, no, all
last
that should be
week
included,
and had this
right?
on, and then all of a sudden we can make it optional for another group. So I mean,
No,
whatever
that's
way
true.
the board wants to go with it, we'll enforce it, but I think it just has to be consistent across the
We
board.
probably should
that's
just
all.
vote on the masking for March 14th, I would think.
Well,
but
again, you guys
it's up
can
to you.
add that piece to it. I guess my only concern is allowing, is having that optional piece. I think it makes it difficult.
Yeah, no, I get
from
it.
school
I
to
get it.
school, that's all.
Okay. Go ahead, Adita.
So the reason that I had when I proposed that, had suggested 2 weeks out was to allow you guys time to do that switch
Yeah.
over to making it optional.
Is
it
I'm
if
sorry.
we were to vote
No,
tonight
hold
to
on.
say,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So optional, maybe I'm getting confusing. Maybe I'm being confusing.
Okay.
Is your 2-week motion, the 14th, to make mass optional?
Mhm.
Yes.
I think that's what we expected, anticipated. The other piece of the motion, though, about co-curricular, extracurricular activities and making mass optional prior to the 14th, and just giving the discretion to the administrators to kind of make that decision, which
That's
which
inconsistent.
activity, that makes me a little bit,
Yep.
I guess I would say, concerned.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's either, well, I'm not saying it's either, it's not my vote, but if everything's going to happen on the 14th, that's great. If something's going to happen before the 14th for co and extracurricular activities, I think that just needs to be clear that that's across the board.
So what
what's
you're,
gonna happen.
so what you're saying is so either you say all co-curricular activities is immediate,
Okay.
masks would be, I guess that's what he's saying, or you could do it in a separate motion. I would rather do it in a separate motion myself, but
Comfortable with implementing the motion as presented at the present time with the amendment? Does it look like
Yeah.
it'll work?
Quite frankly, I'm a little confused about how many different amendments we have.
okay, so let's go. No, that's what I'm saying. Let's go back if I could. Instead of adding that friendly amendment, could we just keep it at, and then we could talk about other motions. The motion on the table, let's just keep it at the original, which is we would like to be mask optional March 14th. Okay? Yes, Jen.
Yes.
I understand wanting to keep it clear, but I really don't want to have a motion that doesn't include when and if and how we would have to pivot back.
Well, no, I
masking.
think part of it would be that what they're going to come up with, it's to be mask optional. Part of that plan that he's going to come up with for that would include any pivoting if it happens. Like, okay, if there's an outbreak at whatever status, we would need to mask up for 2 weeks or whatever that would be. That would still be part of that option. We don't need to come up with that tonight, what those details are. That's what Patrick's going to come up with.
I'd like the motion to include some wording to say that we are
Okay.
going to establish the parameters where we would have to pivot back to mandatory masking.
Okay.
broad, not exact, but just we would, if we come, yeah. The motion should, we will consider the, I don't know, Patrick, can you help me? with that?
Yeah, and I think, well, Dr. Hannah's still on here. I
Yeah.
think she's already said it once. I mean, school outbreak status would be one. I would assume if our positive COVID tests in our district, go on an increase, that's, I'm not sure I could put math with it tonight, but,
Right.
a significant increase in positive COVID cases. And Dr. Hannah, I don't know if there's another metric that you would say that, I mean, we're going to keep track of all of these things that we gave you as a handout, but anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are two of the most important things. But again, if you're just trying to gauge like community rates, I mean, it does make sense that they're following the hospitalizations also, and that's a component of it. But yes, I think our rates within our school, and then outbreak status. I think you just have to figure out how you track that, and that's,
Right.
are you, and how quickly are you going to pivot? Are you going to pivot on a day-to-day basis, or, what is the plan with that? So I think that will take some thought to kind of figure that component out.
So what I just hear is that, I'm trying to figure out the wording here, if any of the board can help me too, that a friendly amendment was going to include the provision that we will pivot back to required masking if outbreak status or positive rates increase to a level, and I don't really know how to finish that last part.
Well, a level that the administration and our doctor feels is a prudent thing to do. I mean, that's what you're.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm trying to get to. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I don't know how to quantify
But
that
we
right
don't
now.
we don't quantify it. That will be done later. But yeah, that can be part of. Okay, so that would be your friendly amendment.
Yes.
Can I add something? Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Katie.
What you're asking is what the SOP will say. I'm assuming it always has told us when certain things need to happen. I'm guessing that the red, yellow, green system that just came out is probably going to be, because essentially what you're asking us to write is a red, yellow, green system, which the federal CDC just proposed. So rather than rewrite what's probably already going to be out there, if we get clarification on how often those statuses are updated, like I wouldn't be surprised, given all the talk we've heard from both Dr. Hannah and this group about our numbers sort of being slightly misrepresented right now, that if it's updated every week, I wouldn't be surprised if by the 14th, it's likely we will be in yellow, and this decision, we can just follow hopefully what it states and use, because I'm hearing both we want to do this, which is great for the board to sort of make that step, but also we want a safeguard in case we need to go back. But essentially, I'm assuming that's hopefully what because everybody is going to need that. So I'm not really sure what I'm saying, other than let's not rewrite hopefully what we're already going to be given, and hope that by the 14th, the data will catch up with the color we are.
And having the language in there doesn't mean you have to do it.
Right.
I mean, it could be, here's what we're using, because it already exists. She just wants it in there so that she knows that that's an option, but you don't have to create it.
No, I'm not worried about the creation. I want to make sure it's the scientists looking at.
Right, no, that's what I'm saying.
The numbers.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so are we, because we got to move on the motion. Do we have?
Could I just
Go ahead.
change it to as necessary?
Sure.
Would that help, Katie? If it was changed to.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the friendly amendment, I would say to the person who made the motion, would be that we would add to your motion to say that we will return to required masking when necessary. How about that?
Yeah, okay.
Simple? Too vague? I don't know, just trying here.
Well, go ahead.
I think that's way too vague.
Yeah, I apologize, and I know it's been over 2 hours, and I still don't understand. I know there's hesitation. I do. I get it, and I also know it would be easier if the main CDC told us go, make it optional. We're still, unless I'm just missing something, we're still looking like we're looking for guidance from the main CDC in a couple of weeks. And I just, I can appreciate Patrick's comment, and I appreciate it about inconsistencies with, well, you know, we're going to give you the option to make an optional for certain groups. I get that, as much as I really would love to see this thing instantaneous tomorrow. But it's confusing. I don't know what I don't know the amendment. I don't know what our motion is. But we're talking only about masking. I appreciate, and Katie has mentioned a few times, masking has become the kryptonite. Mask, don't mask. That's going to fix everything. We've got standard procedures that if the masking goes away, we still have other stuff we have to figure out and follow. But we are talking about masking tonight. So if we can make a motion tonight to make masks optional as of March 14th, to me, it's regardless what the CDC says. We hope they make it optional so that we look better and that we follow Dr. Hannah's advice. But to me, we either make it or we don't. And if we need to make a friendly amendment, I just need to understand it.
Right, I mean,
I'm getting confused.
No, the motion is exactly what you said. The motion as it stands now is that we are going to go mask optional March 14th. That's the amendment. What she's trying to do is add a friendly
Motion.
amendment.
That's the motion.
That's the motion, sorry. She's trying to add a friendly amendment saying that you can pivot, but we can always pivot. You don't have to.
Well, that's it.
You don't have to have that in the motion. We're not giving up any right to do what we need to do based on outbreak status.
In my opinion, if things were so dire right now, this shouldn't even be on our laps. The whole state should be freaking out that kids are getting sick and passing along to their grandparents or what have you. And so, again, I don't want to undermine the work that goes on at the state level, but it's been crickets from them since Friday. So this is in our lap now. And if they felt that we were going to be reckless or misjudge our own community, it would seem like they wouldn't be so quiet. So I would really I'd like to see masks off tomorrow, but I understand, and we've talked about the March 14th. If we can make them effective, optional masking March 14th. The worry about the friendly amendment is that it's too vague.
Okay, so is there opposition to having the language that says we're going to pivot back to required masking, or is it that there's not a specific metric to it?
I don't think it's necessary, because it's making it more complicated when we already have the power to do what we need to do, and the state will do it if we're back in pandemic status anyway, or an outbreak status, because that already exists, those kind of markers. And we may get more specifics of the SOP before even March 14th. All we're really doing tonight is saying, we're going to go mask optional, or the motion, we're going to go mask optional March 14th.
Regardless
You know,
of what the situation is.
I'm just saying, and if they, you know, we can do a separate motion, because I don't want any more amendments. But if we needed to, if something happens sooner, we would go sooner. But I'm just saying, we want to state this is what we want to state, because we want to make that statement, because we don't know what the main CDC is going to do. They might come out and go, well, gee, until we work out all the numbers, which could be April, we don't know what status you're in. We just don't know how fast they're going to catch up, and we don't want to wait till April.
I appreciate that, Chair.
Or some of us don't.
Right, I appreciate that, Chair. If it's not in there, then we're not saying we're going to go mask optional we're going to go mask optional. If there's no if statement in there, if there is no, this is, we're going to be able to pivot back. We're making the commitment to say that we're doing that. If there's nothing else in there that gives any kind of conditional to it, then that's what we are going to vote to do. And I think people would rightfully be able to come back and tell us we have no right to go to
Okay,
change
so,
that. If it's
so when you're saying pivot, you're saying if before March 4th, you're worried about that if there's an outbreak before March 14th.
anytime before March, after, whenever there is an outbreak.
Because
Like,
I was
we're-
thinking more for after, yes, absolutely. But if you're worried that,
And I respect the fact that it's late, that people are tired and they just want this vote done. But this is a complicated vote. It's not just, for me, it's a complicated question.
right, but.
So, and I'm hearing from Dr. Hannah that, there are issues of where you want to return to being
Well,
requirement.
there are, but I don't think stating that we would do this on the 14th takes away from that option. But go ahead, Anita.
Yes, I don't know, I'm just trying to.
I kind of thinking of this in terms of, I write a lot of policy as part of my job. And so what we're kind of trying to do here is to establish a policy as a board. And what I find in my experience in writing policies, if you try to get very specific with something, you get so far into the weeds that you actually create more of a liability for yourself, because you can't possibly cover every potential metric that could arise, every potential factor that could come up. And it's always best to keep it as broad as you can. And with that in mind, I would prefer that the motion remain simplified, that we go mask optional as of March 14th to allow the administration time to adapt and make those changes. I think it's a given. It doesn't need to be part of the motion. It's a given and it's understood that should there be any kind of an outbreak, should the CDC say, we're all shutting down and you're all going home, we're not going to be sitting here being non-compliant. What we're doing is I think we're more just taking a risk. We're putting ourselves out there as this body saying, we're not going to wait on the CDC anymore. We're going to make this decision. And we understand that it is a risk that we may be proven wrong at the end of the day. If that makes sense. I don't know.
No, it doesn't. I think according to Robert's rules, I'm not quite clear. I know we're not absolute, but I made the friendly amendment. The person making the motion does not accept it. I think that kills the amendment.
I think so, yeah.
So I
Yep.
think the amendment is now
Okay.
moot.
It's now moot. All right.
I think, can someone
No,
correct me on that?
I believe you're correct. Yeah. Okay. So can we vote on are we ready to vote on the motion? Okay. No more discussion? Okay. All in favor? Is that everybody? Any opposed? I don't think so. I think it was. All right. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Thank you all, to all the board members for the in-depth discussion. Thank you, Jennifer, and for working through all that. Deeply appreciate it. Okay, 11.2, Patrick.
Oh, yes, sorry, I was skipping one. So we have Eric Vardy. Eric, are you out there?
I am, yes.
All right, and we also have Jonna Stanton in the audience here.
There she is.
So Eric, we didn't put this on the agenda, I meant to, but we only have one course for you to approve or for your consideration tonight. The other part was Eric was just going to take, I know it's late, but he was just going to take a few minutes, a couple minutes, and just explain the newer AP capstone, advanced placement capstone, that program that we have at the high school that's being very successful. So Eric, why don't you go with that first, and then we'll go to the new class.
Yeah, I'll start with just try to be brief here on an update. About 3 years ago, the board voted to approve having Morse move forward as an AP capstone school. And I'll give a review of what that program entails. It basically entails two very interdisciplinary courses, AP Seminar and AP Research. For the first 2 years, and those classes are year long, and you need to take seminar before you take research. For our first 2 years, we were only able to field students to take the first course, AP Seminar, and we ran those in the last two school years. As I said, it's interdisciplinary. We have English teacher teaching the seminar class, and then the research class is taught by a science teacher. They look at holistic problems. They have to formulate arguments. They have to do large presentations, papers, and so on, where they're taking primary, secondary sources and compiling them. The topics themselves are variable, but it's more of the process and coming out with a good product. We took this on as a handful of schools in the state to start pretty early on in the process. In year one, we had 8 students, 6 of which passed the exam with a 3 or higher on the AP Seminar. In year 2, we had 9 students, and all 9 scored above a 3. So getting that credit. And currently, now we're in our 3rd year, we do have 20 students involved in the seminar class, and most of them being underclassmen, majority being sophomores. And we were able to implement the research course this year with a smaller number. We started out with 8, and we have slightly less than that right at this point in the year. So this year will be the first year that we have students who potentially could earn their AP capstone, either certificate or an AP capstone diploma, which many schools see this as sort of on par with an international baccalaureate designation. And so that's exciting for us. And so we're hopeful to see that. In order to earn that, a student needs to have a 3 or higher on seminar and on the AP Research class in order to get the certificate. If they get the full AP capstone diploma, they also have to have a 3 or higher in 4 other AP classes of their choosing, and we have quite a few at Morse. So that's a synopsis of it. It's been successful. Still, at this point, we're still growing with the program. So that's a different topic from my next thing. So if anybody would like to ask questions on the board, feel free to do so around AP Capstone.
Any questions? Yeah, Jennifer?
Sounds like a wonderful program, Eric. Do they get college credit for this? Does it equivalent to any kind of college credit?
Yes, just like any AP class, it depends on the school that they end up going to. Take University of Maine for instance, they do take this credit. Some schools, it's changed a little bit with AP, but usually they do. Credit is sometimes variable. Like if you take AP Biology, for instance, oftentimes they'll take that as your intro, sort of a 101 level biology course, which I would argue it certainly is that and more. But some schools will just take them as elective credits too. So it depends on the school.
I just want to say I'm part of the AP Research AP Seminar program. I'm in AP Research right now, and it's been an incredibly challenging but growth experience. My writing has gotten exponentially better over the course of the last year and a half. And I've taken it with a couple other AP courses, and I think that they work really, really well together, especially taking seminars as sophomore. And I think the course has been really, really valuable to me and my classmates.
Thank you, Natalie. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Lauren.
Mr. Varney, I just want to say thanks for giving us something to talk about academic related this evening. Even though it's late, it's so refreshing and it kind of flies under the radar lately. So thank you. Congrats to those students and teachers as well. Congrats, Natalie.
Thanks for that, Lorna. And I'd just like to point out, those scores when you look at year 1 and year 2 scores, especially year 2, that those students were going to school 2 or 3 days a week. So I applaud those students and those teachers who made that happen. And that teacher has been asked by the AP program to be a AP reader for seminar this year. So that's exciting as well.
So next, to shift into it, we have I'll let Eric and Jonna speak to this one, but it's a half a credit yoga elective, which is a little outside the box maybe for some of you. Back you didn't have yoga when you went to high school, and it would be offered once each semester. And again, it would go in, if you approve it tonight, it would go in the course booklet, and it would only run if we had sufficient numbers, to run it. But Eric or Jonna, do you guys want to add any more?
I can jump in with a little overall, and then and Jonna, feel free to jump in with any more specifics. As Patrick said, it would be a half credit, so it would be a semester-long course where students would be involved in with Mrs. Stanton in yoga. This is a little out of the box. It's not something that hasn't been done by other schools. But there's a lot of data behind the use of yoga in classrooms, both at the elementary school level, but also having an open elective at the high school level. In the board packet, we did leave some information with justification and the course recommendation that would, the course description that would go on the course booklet. So I'll turn it over to Mrs. Stanton if you had any specifics.
I'll be brief. You asked rightly about numbers. Student Services was kind enough to talk to the student body as they signed kids up for classes the last couple of weeks. Right now we have 50 students who want to take yoga as an elective. You've talked, yes, thank you. Thank you. We've talked a lot about mental health tonight. I think yoga might feel outside of the box, but the kids at Morse High School have been practicing yoga for 6 years. And it's been a goal of mine to make it accessible, not just to our athletic teams, which we've had a tremendous amount of support for, and it's been incredibly successful. And I've got pie charts and graphs if anyone is interested. But I think it's really important for kids who aren't playing sports, who are not sure how to find mental health, to be offered that practice in schools. And there's tons and tons of data. In fact, the person who compiled this flyer is a young woman who's taking an independent study with me for yoga because she couldn't find another way to do it. So interest is there. Obviously, the support of our administration is there, which I'm so grateful for. And I just know that it's going to help our community. So thank you for considering.
That's great. And I think most, if not all, I don't know if you guys have, but I know some students back there have had your yoga classes. Would it be one class
Yeah,
in the semester at this point?
I've been working with Student Services quite a bit this winter to try to figure out what will give. And what we've decided preliminarily is probably I will let go one of my 9th grade English classes and take this yoga elective. And because the interest is so high, we'll work with Charlie and Becky to be maybe even in this space, and 25 kids in the fall and 25 kids in the spring. We all know it never works out that cleanly, but basically we'd like to be able to give it to every kid who wants to take it. And I really don't want it to be a first come, first serve. I don't want to choose who's doing it and who's not. I would really like everyone who can fit it into their schedule to do so. It'll be tough because it's a singleton, but we'll try to work with phys ed, who've also given this their blessing. Maria Miner has given it her blessing. Maria Morris has already worked with her JMG kids and has given, I've kind of tried to talk to anyone who might have a stake in this. And especially Becky and Charlie, because I never would want to step on their toes and what they're trying to do with phys ed. And they've done so much excellent work. And, I've done unified yoga with them. And so I think it makes sense to do yoga for that one course next year in a period where they're not having class, so it doesn't conflict with anything they're doing.
Great, thank you. Any other question? Yeah, Jen?
Would you doing this take you out of the classroom for teaching?
It would lessen my English course load by 1. So I would teach 2 ninth grade classes instead of 3 as of now. But I mean, ultimately those decisions are up to administration, of course. So it might not be ninth grade. It might be wherever they decide they need to shift me. And I will tell you that was a really hard part of this. I've been an English teacher for 26 years. And that's how important this is to me, that it was hard to let a class go. It was, and my department head, what a monster. My husband, for those of you who don't know. We also ran the numbers as a department. I talked to them about this. And obviously, if the numbers don't support it and they need me teaching English, we'll figure something else out because that's always the priority.
So even if you were not in a one class less, that doesn't mean, would students still have a chance to have you as a teacher
Absolutely.
between freshman through senior?
Absolutely.
Like just,
And
as
I'd
long as
have-
you're still in that rotation to have that
Yeah.
experience with all the kids. 'Cause-
Yeah. And I'll actually have access to a lot more kids than I would have, which I hope you think is a good thing. So, yeah,
Absolutely,
yes,
that's-
to answer your question.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Go ahead, Jim.
Sure. I'm just going to speak very biased here because I've been a student of Jana's for about 4 years as far as yoga is concerned. And I would say that she's very gifted in what she does. And I think the more students that we can get with her to do yoga, the better emotionally and physically all of our students will be. So I'm very excited
Thank
and
you.
fully
That's very
support
kind
this.
to say.
I would like to jump in, sorry to jump in on one point about the impacts on English. And I would see this as we have a lot of teachers who teach an elective that's not a graduation required class. And it's sometimes you have to make a hard decision and not offer an elective if the teacher is needed in a graduation required course. So that's something that we weigh when we're making a master schedule. And right now we think we can swing this and offer both, but it might at some point it might be that you have to make that hard decision and not offer the elective 1 year in order to cover those. But that's a decision that we make all the time.
Oh, I was just
Yeah,
gonna
go ahead.
have a quick comment. Usually I'm, a bit of a spiritual cynic, but when I ran cross country, I took yoga with Mrs. Stanton and it was pretty illuminating.
Thank you.
Are you recording this, Damien?
Yeah, it's on.
I'd like a copy.
Yep. Anything else? So we just need a motion then?
I'll make a motion to approve the elective of yoga.
Okay, motion by Lorna, second by Jamie. Okay, any other discussion? All right, all in favor?
Ah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mrs. Stanton. Okay, where are we? Personnel items?
Yep. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Jonah. So we have 4 retirements, and I would just like to thank these people for their years of service. First is Gail Azeltine, who was a speech pathologist at Woolwich. She's been with us for 21 years. Next, we have Judy Main, who's an art teacher at Dyke Newell, and she's been with us for 15 years. Cora Fahey, who's an ed tech at Woolwich, 22 years. And Mary Connors, an ed tech at Bath Middle School, and like to thank her for 35 years of service to the district. And then just FYI, resignations, Josh Karen, band instructor at Phippsburg, Tim Harkins, food service director, and Brooke Newberg, guidance counselor at Morse High School. And, I guess, Lou, you can take it over, but as far as executive session, we'll do that tomorrow. It's 3:00.
Yep.
It's at central office. If any of you, so it's in person, if any of you need to somehow, do it virtually, then would you just email me early in the morning so I can kind of figure that out with Dean and his crew, if we need to have somebody come into the meeting that way. So anyway.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we have that for tomorrow. Next meeting date is March 28th, 6:00 right here. Motion to adjourn, or go ahead. No, go ahead. Sorry.
So our food service director, how is that? I'm just kind of it's a mid-year change. That's a hard thing, mid-year change. So I was just wondering, do we have candidates lined up for that? Or how are you feeling about?
The
replacing that?
top two are mid-year changes. The last one is not on there. So we've got a band instructor advertised for both Fisher Mitchell and Phippsburg to make that a 1.0 if we can attract candidates. Right now, we don't have any. And then for food service, I was going to send it to you at the end of the week, but for right now, we did interview and we weren't successful with that first process. So we're looking at different options that we have right now. So I'll provide you guys with a little more information by the end of this week when I know more. So.
All right, thanks, Jen. Motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, Lorna and Jamie. Okay, great. All in favor? Thank you all.